Hello and welcome to the Blockbusters podcast. It's a Bwam Christopher Nolan special. Bwam.
You ready? I was born ready.
Hello and welcome to the Blockbusters podcast. It's our special Christopher Nolan episode where myself, Rado, and Connor will be talking about the best director of all times, Stanley Kubrick.
What is it? Christopher Edward Nolan, I believe.
Oh no, you got the Wikipedia page open. You're reading out Christopher Edward Nolan was born in... Okay, come on. Give me the facts.
Christopher Edward Nolan, CBE, pronounced Nolan, according to this little pronunciation thing. Born the 30th of July 1970, is a British-American filmmaker known for making personal, distinctive films within the Hollywood mainstream. His directional efforts have grossed more than 4.7 billion in theaters worldwide and garnered a total of 34 Oscar nominations and 10 wins, but none of them yet, Rado, for that best director or best movie.
Yeah, because the Academy doesn't like, first of all, comic book movies, until The Joker, obviously. And the Academy is not kind of fond of maybe action movies as well, which most of the Christopher Nolan movies are actually big action movies. So who cares about them, right?
Yep. Fuck them.
Fuck.
I will never forgive them, Rado, for the... Do you know what won the year Inception came out? Do you know what movie won Best Picture?
It was King's Speech.
King's Speech. Fuck that fucking movie.
King's Speech, yes.
You know how I feel about period pieces as well.
Yeah.
Fuck that movie.
About the
oh my god.
The stammering king. So we have a new movie from Christopher Nolan coming to cinemas on the 26th of August. And we've been waiting for that film at least since June. Or probably even longer than that. And finally it's going to be here. So Connor already has his ticket.
I do.
Row E, seat 14 and 15, bang in the middle of the biggest screen in Belfast, which is almost as big as 65-inch TV. But I hope I'll be watching Tenet in the IMAX theater. So,
so
fingers
jealous.
crossed for that. Yeah. And we decided actually to kind of rewatch some of the films he made within his, 22 years of filmmaking. And we decided to kind of, talk about them a little bit more in this episode. That's why there's not going to be any news, there's not going to be any other reviews, or there is no... talking gibberish about something that's not relevant, like pizza ovens or
HDMI cables are still a story to tell.
Yeah, or cycling. Cycling is a story to tell as well, but we're not going to do any of that. So, Connor, can you tell me why did you kind of push for talking about those specific movies, and 5 movies actually, not the others? Because Christopher Nolan has at least 5 more films. So he's got 10 films altogether in his filmography.
Just with Tenet coming out next week, I kind of thought it would be a good idea for us to go back and revisit some of his other ones, because I feel like with Christopher Nolan, as you watch his films, you can almost see his evolution as a director. Kind of come into play, right? Like you can see how he learns a little bit of something in every movie and applies that to the next movie. And he also has his own his own style and his own themes which continue throughout all of the movies. And the movies that I left out are the ones that I feel like don't represent that the most. You know, like, so Following was the first movie that he directed. That's his kind of directorial debut in 1998. And it's a much smaller budget. Still kind of amazing for someone coming off the bench for the first time to come up with a movie like that and have it be both successful critically and I think to some extent commercially. Obviously not anywhere near what he goes on to achieve. Likewise with Insomnia, which came in 2002, his third movie, which, as we discussed just before the show, is the only one I think out of all of his movies that he wasn't involved in writing. It was a remake of a movie from a few years prior, a Norwegian film from a few years prior. You know, I kind of get the feeling that it was produced or distributed by Warner Brothers, and I kind of get the feeling that it was some sort of contractual obligation to, as you put it, you know, see how he worked with like bigger talent, so that when it came to the directing Batman and stuff a few years later, that they knew that he was up to scratch. But I, you know, feel like maybe that's a movie that he is not as passionate about. And you hear about Memento all the time, you hear about The Prestige, you hear about obviously Inception, Interstellar, and Dunkirk, but I feel like Following and Insomnia are two movies that most people would have no idea Christopher Nolan had anything to do with if you ask them to name his movies. I feel like it would start with maybe Memento, but certainly The Prestige would kind of be where a lot of people's, or obviously Batman Begins just before The Prestige, but I feel like that would come in people's minds just before any of the others would. So I felt like those movies that we're going to look at today feel like the most Christopher Nolan movies, the ones that are passion projects for him. So they felt like the most appropriate ones, as Tenet, out next week, feels like very much a passion project for him as well.
I think it's kind of controversial that we're leaving out like the Batman trilogy, because like it is these are Batman movies. However, you know, they are completely different than what was before. You know, he leaves such a unique mark on those movies, and you know, we could probably kind of put them into our discussion, but I think they are also quite fun to discuss as a separate piece, as the trilogy, you know, separately, just the Batman trilogy as well. So we're not going to be talking about the Batman movies,
no,
either, which is if you're waiting for our Batman reviews, you have to wait until the new Batman movie comes out, and then we will definitely discuss that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I was actually just thinking about it yesterday. I am so excited to talk to you about particularly The Dark Knight, which I think is my favorite movie of all time, and certainly the movie I have seen more than any other movie. So I could watch it multiple times a year, and often do watch it multiple times a year. I could quote so much of it word for word. So I'm so excited to actually get the chance to talk about that. But I felt like in the interest of time and just kind of fitting this all together, it made most sense to break Batman out and leave them as their own episode for us to talk about one by one.
Yeah, talking about the time, this is one of Christopher Nolan's favorite things, the time. So we're going to time ourselves and try not to talk longer than 15 minutes about his movies. And Connor's going to be our timekeeper. And I'm going to do the tick, 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 tick in the background when he speaks. So you will feel like, yeah, you are a proper Christopher Nolan, you know, talking points. But I just wanted to add one thing. I've not watched Following. I don't think you've watched Following either.
No,
Connor.
No, it's really hard to find, like to actually watch online. It's not on iTunes or anything like that to just get. So.
No, normally you would go to HMV and buy the DVD from the shelf, but who knows what this store stocks anymore these days. The other thing is we've decided. I mean, I've watched the Insomnia back in the days, and I remember it. I remember liking it a little bit, not very much. And I agree with you absolutely. It's not the original movie, like the essential movie. However, I found one list on Letterboxd that had Insomnia as number one of Christopher Nolan movies, with the explanation, this is the film that doesn't have the gimmick. That's why I love it. Because all the other films have the gimmick.
They do.
Yeah. And you can either love it or hate it, right? So one other thing I wanted to say, I mentioned Stanley Kubrick, but I think, Christopher Nolan kind of fits in that image of this kind of British American director. Alfred Hitchcock was obviously British, and then he started working in America. Stanley Kubrick was American who was working in Britain and then kind of like moving between. And Christopher Nolan is the same. He's from Britain, and then like he moves to the US very quickly to work there. And when you hear him speak, you're 100% sure he's not American. Like he's got this very British accent.
Absolutely.
It's like so he is, for me, he's in line of those like great directors, even like going back in time, maybe even Fritz Lang or Cecil B. DeMille, like people with vision and who want to have control over the subject, and they want to be involved in everything. And when you hear him talking or his people he's working with, everyone is always like, he's not the type of director who sits back in a chair and just use the radio to communicate with other people to tell the actor what to do. He's actually with them. He's with the DOP, who is with the director of photography, and he actually tells people. He discusses things with them. He looks through the camera lens. He actually moves the camera. So, this is the person who loves his job, who loves what he's doing. And, this kind of meticulousness, when you hear stories about Stanley Kubrick, and who would be shooting the same scene all over and all over again, because he's like driven for perfection. I don't think Christopher Nolan is that kind of bad in that, but he's got his vision as well, and I love it, so his every movie is an event, and hopefully Tenet's gonna live to the expectation.
I think he's just such he just absolutely loves the craft and the art of making cinema, but yet he's not particularly interested in, and I think this is why I'm so drawn to his films, is that so many of the movies, for example, that you love are like so beautiful and so well crafted, and then they have these tiny audiences, and they only ever were gonna have tiny audiences, so they sometimes have a bit of a fearlessness to them to try new things and get creative. And then usually on the opposite end of that scale, you go to Hollywood, where the creativity gets tighter and tighter and tighter because it has to fit a mold that's going to draw in audiences and make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And somehow Christopher Nolan has managed to find this middle spot where he can act independently. He has full creative control over every single frame that is going to come out. He has control over the marketing, over interviews, like you name it, like everything passes through him first and foremost. Yet he does it with the understanding that he wants to put people in cinema seats. He wants the $100 million, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue coming in from these films. Like, that's what he wants. He's not making a movie to go into the cinema that, has a tiny budget that doesn't make any of its money back and only gets shown in a handful of art cinemas or art house cinemas. Like, he wants the blockbuster. He wants those screens filled. And that to me is awesome. Because it usually goes one or two ways, and there's very few people that go through that middle and find the sweet spot. And to me, Nolan has just found the sweet spot, and it's awesome. Just funny with you saying about him actually like holding the camera and stuff. I was watching some behind the scenes of Dunkirk, and they had built this kind of rig to mimic a Spitfire, or the actors could sit in the Spitfire, and they put it on the edge of a cliff so that when they filmed, you could see the sea on the other side, and it would give the impression that they were flying in the sky. And it was a massive pneumatic rig, and Christopher Nolan himself was in front of the rig with Hoyt van Hoytema, like controlling the rig, like turning the wheel to get the shots, you know. And I think I mentioned it before on the episode where we talked about the behind the scenes of the Star Wars movies, where how J.J. Abrams very much like, who I loved, like, but showed up on set in these different locations and was kind of like, yep, that's good, this is what we want, that looks great, gotta go to the next thing. You know, and it's not to say that he's not in there and getting involved as well, but it definitely seems like every single frame of the film, Christopher Nolan has some part to play on set. About it. There's no secondary teams or anything that go off. I think that happened with Inception, actually. There were no secondary units. Yeah, it's just the primary one, which is it's just crazy to think about. But that's the level at which he's operating, and I think it shows in his movies. Anyway, I think we should probably start getting into these now.
Yeah, let's kick off. We are like 15 minutes in our discussion, like big kind of opening. Let's go back in time. The year is 2000. Connor, how old were you?
In 2000, I was 9 years old.
Yeah, so Connor, you probably don't even remember this movie when it came out, right? You had no clue what's happening.
No.
So year 2000, I started my uni in year 2000. So and I studied film, and as you kind of go into, you know, meeting people who are like really passionate about films and everything, if someone discovers something, they will be like talking about it forever. And this is, I think, one of my kind of first discoveries, you know, when I was at the uni. It was like someone was talking about this movie. You should watch it, like Memento. Why? Just watch, you know, like we probably had like illegal copies or something, you know, downloaded from the internet. I don't remember watching that movie in the cinema, to be honest, but I was blown away when I watched it for the first time. And I was just thinking, what the fuck just happened?
I guess I've already told you about my condition.
Funny, every time I see you.
You don't remember where you've been or what you've just done.
I can't make new memories. Everything just fades.
What's the last thing you do remember?
My wife,
That's sweet.
dying.
You really want to get this guy, don't you?
My wife deserves vengeance.
When you find this guy, what are you gonna do?
Kill him.
Somebody's got to pay, Lenny. Somebody always pays.
It's one of those films you're like, okay, give me more. Like, I want to watch it again. And I rewatched it a few weeks ago, and I had exactly the same feeling. It was like, this movie has not aged at all whatsoever. We're gonna spoil pretty much every movie, I think. So just a heads up, if you've not watched any of them and you still want to be surprised, please maybe put it on pause and come back when you watch the movies we keep on discussing. I'm gonna add the timestamps as well in the show notes, so we can move on to, for example, Inception or Interstellar. But Memento is such a wonderful film. So the cover has the Polaroid picture, right? And there's a Polaroid picture within a Polaroid picture within a Polaroid picture. And it starts actually with the shot of a Polaroid, right? So the Polaroid, actually, you can see the developed Polaroid, and then it's kind of fading away as he's moving the Polaroid. And this is perfect opening of a movie. This movie tells you everything about itself before it even starts. So you have a Polaroid, which obviously the character played by Guy Pearce is using for, you know, writing notes, remembering and everything, but also shows the memory disappearing in front of our eyes. Like he made a memory and it's disappearing. Like so the whole twist is the guy has a
short-term memory loss.
Shortcut memory loss that you know, he got in. It was like a robbery or assault on his and his wife.
So we believe, like, there's
yeah, that's what he remembers, right? And we watched the kind of story from his perspective, going backwards. So we see the final shot at the very very beginning of the movie, and then we going back in time to kind of dig in who is this person. And you showed me this video, and I really liked it. So there is Christopher Nolan standing in like a lecture hall, like a small lecture hall, and he's got a whiteboard, and he explains Memento to like two guys, and he starts drawing the timelines, and it's fascinating to see how his kind of mind works. So there's one timeline is he explains is the colorful things, so the colorful pictures. So it's essentially going step by step back in time. And then there's another timeline that is the black and white timeline, when you see which time is going forward, and they meet at some point, and that point is the beginning of the movie. So it's like, it doesn't make sense when you talk about it, but when you see it, it's just like all comes together. So from that movie, Christopher Nolan loves this. He's gonna be doing it all over again, more or less, in some other films, when he's gonna be like, okay, I've got this story written, as straight, and now I'm gonna try to tell it a little bit different, just to pick your interest. I even was trying to find a version of that movie somewhere when you can watch it as it is, as it should be kind of seen, chronologically.
Like cut chronologically,
But would it make sense? It would be completely different movie, right? So it's cut like this for a purpose. How many times have you watched Memento? Was it your first time you watched it recently?
No, this is probably my third, I think. Yeah, that's probably the third time I watched it. I think I maybe first watched it in like 2006 or 7, and then a few years later, and then a few weeks ago.
And what did you think when you rewatched it recently? Did it bring any memories? How do you see it over time?
Was that a pun? Was that like some sort of joke there? Was it?
If
did
there was,
make you remember
it
things?
wasn't intentional.
So I think this movie starts off as Christopher, it really sets the tone for Christopher Nolan's career in multiple ways. Obviously, you have the kind of twist in there, or the gimmick, as some people would call it. There's something that this movie has that makes it particularly unique. And you also have Jonathan Nolan, his brother, is the co-writer on it, and then you also
he wrote the original short story that was like a base for the movie.
And then you also have Wally Pfister who did the cinematography, Wally Pfister has also been with Christopher Nolan from this movie all the way through then until Dunkirk, where it was Hoyt van Hoytema. I think he even did Interstellar as well.
No. Hoyt Hoytema did Interstellar.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's when he first changed then over. But I think it's interesting how it sets up Nolan's career in multiple ways, and the sort of things the tent poles that he sticks to very much so. Even though every movie is very different than the last, he has a very collaborative approach, and he finds people that work well together and clearly sticks with them, which is cool. The movie itself, I have so much appreciation for it in terms of the creativity of it, the crazy ideas that it has, the performances are all amazing. That being said, I do find it difficult to watch. I've all the way through sometimes. I find that the change in the editing of it, that flashbacks and the black and white scenes versus the color scenes, sometimes take me out of the movie because my brain is too busy trying to figure out what's what and what's happening and where's happening and stuff like that, so that always ends up lifting me out of it, I think, a little bit more than it should do.
It's not as polished as accessible as his later films, but I kind of appreciate it because it is almost like an indie movie. Because he was a very not a known director. He got a great cast in there. He's got Guy Pearce. He's got
half of the Matrix.
Almost. Yeah, he's
Carrie-Anne
got
Moss.
Joe Pantoliano. So it's a good cast, but it's not kind of page one like cast.
Yeah, no.
This is gonna happen in 2 years when he's gonna be working with Al Pacino and Robin Williams, like the proper A-star actors. But it's like a proper good indie movie, and I could understand my colleagues, when we were like those young, kids, or like almost, going to adults and studying in the university and watching this movie, because it was the time of a Matrix, it was the time of Equilibrium, it was the time of those like, yeah, do you remember like all those films when they have a gimmick, they kind of look cool, but this movie is not about like visual effects, but it's got its visual style 100%, and it has something in it that just kind of like makes you want to go back to it and watch it and think about it. Like always, like when I watched this time, I was thinking, what would I do? Like how would I kind of exist in this reality? You create your own reality. You don't really know what is real and what isn't. Like, what's the history? Like, you kind of tell yourself a story, and do you even know what's true, what's there? Like the questions that film kind of makes you ask yourself, they are super fascinating. And like where would you stop when something would happen to your wife, to your family? And it's almost kind of like a John Wick revenge story, but it's much more twisted than that. It's not as straightforward as you can imagine. I have to say, there will be, we'll be talking about rankings towards the end, but I'm not surprised. Some people still think this is the best movie he've ever made.
Yeah,
kind of very raw film, very kind of powerful, and has everything, like you said, is everything that Christopher Nolan will do in the future. In this movie is I love it.
It definitely sets up his career massively, for sure. Like it just sets the tone for like, oh, this guy is really, really creative, but has such an attention to detail and a willingness to really try like just batshit crazy ideas. And I don't know if you necessarily pick that up from the film, but whenever you watch the video that I linked you to, and he's trying to explain how the timeline works in it, it's not just like a linear timeline, it's like a kind of a backwards C almost, right? And the bottom half time is running forward on the C, and then the top half time is running backwards, and the beginning of the movie is at that middle point in the C where they kind of meet, but that's also kind of the end of the movie as well. Exactly. And it's like, oh my god, like how, and this all started from him and his brother on a car journey. They had to travel across America. I think Jonathan told them, I had this short story and this is it, and then they began to flesh it out, and it ended up becoming the movie. And it's just like, that's so crazy in and of itself, just that crazy idea to the like, this could work, and then how they executed and the use of the black and white in a slightly different way that both of them are shot, because the black and white is from Guy Pearce's perspective, and the colored scenes are not. The colored scenes are like the audience's perspective of things as well. So like you have this like the actual use of film itself to tell the audience a story. It's not just that you have actors reading lines. It's like, no, you're using everything here. You're using your music, and you're using how the camera is positioned in the scene to tell a very intricate and albeit small story.
Okay, Connor, thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite crazy moment from Memento? Top of your head? Like, if I give you 3 seconds.
The scene where he's in the car and he's been shot at, and he doesn't remember that he's been shot at.
I love it.
It's so
I love
good.
when he's chasing someone and he thinks he's chasing someone, then he's like, oh no, he's actually chasing me.
That's the part. Sorry, that's the part.
But the other one is when Carrie-Anne Moss actually checks whoever he is. He's bluffing with his memory. She spits into the beer.
Yeah.
Let him drink it.
Gross. Yeah,
it's horrible.
Yeah, there's so many clever little moments in it. Like, even like her getting into the sort of like he, where he hits her and then she goes out and gets into the car and then just like comes back into the house, and almost as like a repeat conversation again. It's just, yeah, it's very clever. Anyway, we're gonna do Letterboxd reviews for each of these.
Yeah, so I gave this film on Letterboxd 4.5 star, and I wrote Nolan Begins. If I have to be nitpicking, lengths of Leonard's memories are really arbitrary, and around Natalie, they seem to be much shorter than other times. So that was my kind of like, why did I write it? I have no idea. But I kind of feel like this is almost a perfect film, very close to perfect, 4.5 star. What do you think?
I probably got to go with 3.5. So I think we're going to land on 4 in the middle. And it's not because I think that it's a bad movie. Like I've explained, I love this movie, but there's something about it that I don't overly enjoy watching it. Like I love it. I think it's amazing, but I'm like, I watched it once and I think I'm done watching it for another few years until I come back to it again at some point. You know, it's just the changing of the time in it just sort of loses my attention a little bit from time to time, and it probably could be a little bit tighter and a little bit better. So I would go with 3.5. So do we agree on 4 stars?
Yeah, we have to. It's the mathematical average. I just found a very funny review from Maria on Letterboxd. Finding Dory plus 50 First Date plus Inception equals Memento.
Yeah, I think I've read that one actually as well. I might have even liked it on Letterboxd too. But yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so we're gonna jump in a few years, but we're gonna jump, like I said earlier, the Insomnia, 2002. 2005, he did Batman Begins, and we're skipping that one for the Batman reasons. And we go to 2006.
A real magician tries to invent something new. It's something that other magicians will scratch their heads over.
I suppose you have such a trick.
Actually, I do. It's the one they're gonna remember me for.
What happened?
It was the greatest magic trick I've ever seen. I need to know how he does it.
He has no trick. It's real. Every great magic trick consists of 3 acts. The first act is called the pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary, but of course, it probably isn't. The second act is called the turn.
He's obsessed with discovering your method.
The magician makes this ordinary something do something extraordinary. Now you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it. That's why there's a third act called the prestige. This is the part with the twists and turns, where lives hang in the balance.
Julie, come on!
And you see something shocking you've never seen before.
So I watched The Prestige not that long ago. I mentioned that to you, and we were talking about the same. There were 2 films about magicians dueling. Yeah. One was The Prestige, the other was The Illusionist. And The Prestige is a big boy film. Big boy film. So this is the story of 2 stage magicians on the end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century. I think around 1899, I think as well. So the numbers like kind of 19th century or 20th century begins. And they are fighting to create like the ultimate illusion. And they will sacrifice everything to, be better than one another. There is a tragic accident that kind of sparks that thing between them, and it goes really, really crazy. So the cast is really impressive. So we have Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and also Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, David Bowie, Andy Serkis. So this is a really impressive film. It's a period movie, so you should not be liking it, Connor, based on what you told me earlier.
Yeah, it's not a period drama though, is it? It's more of a thriller. I think maybe I'm okay with thrillers, especially if they've got magic.
Yeah, it's this movie is much more kind of easy to access, much more polished in terms of the visuals. But if you watch this movie closely, are you watching closely? You will again see the same bit. So the opening sequence when Michael Caine says, "Are you watching closely?" It's essentially giving you a sign. Okay, pay attention to this film. Pay attention to what you're seeing, and go. And he explains how the trick works. You just have to have that in mind when you watch that film. You will be essentially rewarded by that. I remember when I kind of watched it for the first time, I maybe didn't get everything, but like watching it second time kind of reveals everything. And my kind of problem with that film maybe was you can only be surprised by this film once.
Yeah.
And it maybe doesn't work that well second time, as the Memento, for example, works for me every time, despite I know the outcome of it, but I'm so mesmerized by it. And also, where you mentioned you don't like period films. I mean, every element in there, every detail is so precise and so like you feel like you're in the era, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a problem with that. However, I still had a feeling this is kind of Christopher Nolan's attempt on maybe a romance or like a very sad romantic story that doesn't maybe work on every level for me. There is also, story of a family but mainly the weird and wacky ending of that film. And I'm not kind of entirely sure, what happened there, because it is so grounded in reality on so many levels, but then it kind of goes to this kind of very weird place, thanks to the invention by Nikola Tesla, played by David Bowie here, that I was like, this is almost science fiction here. And I kind of like, I was like, it's not something I dig to the very, very end. I know that there are people who love this film much more, but I'm not on the same page. Connor, you?
I would say for this one, I like it a lot more than I like Memento. And in terms of watching it the second time, I actually find enjoyment watching it the second time once you know the reveal at the end of it, because you can kind of see then the hints and the clues that are there throughout the film, like some very obvious ones that are like right in front of you, but like Michael Caine says, are you watching closely at the very start? Like you end up not watching closely, evidently, because there are some things you're like, I can't believe that I didn't see that happen or that part play out right in front of me. I mean, it's not always super obvious. Well, obviously Christian Bale kind of plays two characters, and one of them does look like Christian Bale, and then the other one looks like Christian Bale in a costume.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the movie makes an attempt to hide it, but also the attempt to hide that it's Christian Bale is a little bit obvious at times, because he doesn't say anything. He's like a mute the whole movie, this other person. So it's sort of like you kind of start to go, why is this guy so weird? And then if you look closely enough at it, you kind of go, oh, that looks like Christian Bale. As a matter of fact, we were watching it, and I think this was Enya's first time, and at the very start of the movie, when Christian Bale is in the courthouse and he looks up and he sees his daughter and a man standing behind her, and you said, is that Christian Bale? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So like, but that being said, there are still many moments in the movie where watching it a second time, things are a little bit more obvious. One scene, for example, is whenever they go to the sort of funeral or memorial for Hugh Jackman's wife, and Christian Bale shows up to kind of pay his respects, and Hugh Jackman is incredibly angry at him at that point, and he starts yelling at him, "Did you know?" Because previously in the film they had talked about trying to do a different knot that she could break free from in the trick, and they went ahead and did this different knot without the knowledge of anyone, and she ends up being unable to escape and drowning in the tank. But when you watch that scene the second time, Hugh Jackman's shouting at Christian Bale and saying, you know, did you know what one you did? And Christian Bale just says, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. And when you watch it the second time, it's a bit more obvious that, oh, maybe he legitimately doesn't, because it's not actually him that's there, right? It's the other brother this time, the twin, that is went to pay his respects. And so those moments throughout the film I think are really enjoyable to see a second time. This is another one again where we see Christopher Nolan like attempting something new that then sets precedent for the rest of his movies going forward. So the time, or not the time machine, the kind of replicator or the cloning machine built by Nikola Tesla, it is that sort of like gimmick again, but this time it's very out there. It's dipping its toe into being completely unrealistic, which for someone who grounds a lot of his movies in very heavy realism, he also really loves to play with this element of something that isn't almost possible. Like doesn't seem possible. It seems out of the realm of possibility, and we see that pretty much in all of his movies going forward. I would argue you even see that in the Batman movies. You certainly see it in Inception. It's in Interstellar with the time traveling sort of stuff and the fifth dimension or fourth dimension stuff. It's not so much a part to play in Dunkirk, but I think it doesn't fit in Dunkirk. I feel like that, you know, was a movie about a point in time that he wanted to capture, so it didn't make sense for him to write some kind of crazy thing into the script. But it certainly seems like Tenet also has this like sort of extra element that is just beyond the realm of possibility. You know, like it's believable enough that it could be true. And I'm sure Tenet will explain it in a way that makes you go, oh, okay, like I can see what's happening. It's not just, you know, time travel or something like that. So I really enjoy this movie. I think this is Christopher Nolan like really kind of coming into his own with like he knows exactly the vision that he has, and he knows how he wants to execute it, and he knows how he wants to play with audiences' expectations for each film going forward. And he learns a lot from this one that he implements into pretty much all of the rest of his films after this.
I completely get what you're saying. You know, the final bit reminds me of Interstellar, because Interstellar is kind of written for like based on science, right? So at least the science we kind of know, and maybe theoretical kind of concepts of, you know, space travel and time and black holes and everything. And this one is based on the inventions that Tesla could have come up with at some point. And it's kind of like heavy, like, oh, Tesla was such a genius that, you know, he could have created something like that, which, you know, I'm like, because it's set in a specific time, I feel like is for me, maybe I'm just being really, really picky here. Like maybe just a step too far with that. And but apart from that, you know, there is so much to like about this film. I think the actors are fantastic in it. The kind of play with timeline as well. It's very delicate. It's there. It's not as in your face as in Memento, but you know, you still kind of go to like memories, and like it's not as straightforward as you would think it is, because it's it actually starts with one of the magicians dying, right? And then the other one is put on trial, and then you kind of watch it going back. But like I said, it's not as flashy as like, oh, now we're gonna do a cut, so you know that this is this. You have to pay attention to it, and you see like, okay, what's going on when Scarlett Johansson appears, like where is she in this specific moment in time, and so on. So it's a very nice, very polished movie. I think maybe for kind of my liking, maybe a little bit over polished, to be honest. But yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's not a movie I kind of like don't like, but after like the second or third viewing, I thought to myself, yeah, okay, I don't need to watch this movie again anymore. So
I think the performances are great from everyone in it, which really helps. Like I think everybody, including Hugh Jackman, who up until this point was kind of seen as a little bit of a, kind of like just handsome dummy kind of actor, like he was just going to be one of those because of he's kind of most famous, I guess, for Wolverine, and yet Christopher Nolan kind of believed that there was more depth to him than people had really seen, and I think he put in a great performance here. Christian Bale is amazing. Scarlett Johansson, who I forgot completely was even in this film, is great. Rebecca Hall is amazing. Even Andy Serkis, for as little as he's in it, still has a really great performance. So I think that like all of that for me kind of is that just like dialing it up to become more of like a Hollywood movie. We have 15 seconds left. Where are we going to put this one on our rating?
I gave it 4 stars.
Okay, I'll go with 4 because I was going to go with 4.5, but I'll concede with 4 for this one. So we will.
There it is. So this is the Prestige 2006, and we rated it with 4 stars. And I'm trying to find like a punny review of that, but there is one I kind of liked here. When the prank war just goes too damn far.
Very good.
Yeah. I like when people come up with those puns, like I wish mine was as good as these ones. Okay, next movie in our Christopher Nolan special, the Blockbusters podcast, sponsored by no one, is the 2010 Inception. So we're skipping the Dark Knight 2008 and we're landing straight into Inception.
What's the most resilient parasite? An idea. A single idea from the human mind can build cities. An idea can transform the world and rewrite all the rules. Which is why I have to steal it.
Never recreate from your memory. Always imagine new places.
He's hiding something, and we need to find out what that is.
We gotta break out of here. Give him the kick. This was not a part of the plan. Wake me up! Wake me up!
So for me, I have to be honest with you, like, Christopher Nolan kind of appears on my radar from time to time until 2010. He's the guy who made Memento, right? And then apparently he made a movie about those, magicians. At some point, he also made Batman. And for me, Batman was kind of like, oh, Batman, yeah, great. Like The Dark Knight we're going to probably mention that is absolutely greatest, Batman movie ever made. But for me, Inception is this film when I kind of knelt down in front of the screen and I said, Christopher Nolan, my soul belongs to you. And that was just thanks to my girlfriend who used to work in the Odeon Leicester Square, and she gave me ticket to the film world premiere of Inception.
Wow, how lucky.
And I was there kind of, watching a movie. I didn't know what I was going for, like, to be honest, it was probably those dark days for me when I would be, checking like, who is the director? What's going on there? And, obviously the biggest event was that Leonardo DiCaprio was there, in person.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge thing.
That's cool.
But Yeah. So this movie ended, and I could not stop thinking about it until like 2 weeks later. I went to watch it again in the IMAX, and for me, Inception is the best Christopher Nolan movie. So
Wow.
just gonna go there and just jump there and say 5 stars from me straight away. And this is I think, when I was talking about the ridiculousness of the idea from Prestige, this goes beyond that idea. But for some reason, the whole movie works despite Connor, from the very first scene to the almost very last scene, we are being told what's happening in the movie. So until in the final act, they still explain how this world exists and what is happening in the normally I would be so annoyed with this, and I see this. I've watched this recently, and I was like, why they keep talking about how these are the rules of being inside someone's dream, and this is we used to build those things, and when you fall into someone, when you die, you don't wake up in this one because you're too deep. Like, oh my god, just stop explaining. But I was just like, I don't care. This movie is so visually stunning. So the centerpiece of this film is there is so many, but I think is Joseph Gordon-Levitt jumping up and down the corridor and fighting the bad guys, because they are like, the gravity is gone because they are actually in a dream, and inside that dream they are falling down from from the edge of the bridge, and inside that dream, this is just beyond everything. Like, do you agree this movie is just crazy? Like, the concept behind it is crazy, but it somehow just works. I'm sorry, I'm bubbling because I just love this film.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like, this is again kind of like Memento. It's like the actual concept and the thought of this film from its very beginning is so crazy on its own. Never mind to actually getting to the point where you have something that you can capture on film. Right, because there's a big leap between those two things. Like, it's okay, and it's easy to have ideas. It's harder to flesh those ideas out into actual good ideas, and then to turn those ideas into like living things is crazier again, and incredibly difficult to do. And yet he manages to pull it off excellently. Like, time after time, and every scene, something is kind of cool and different. And again, going back to just to kind of reiterate, like, he keeps developing more through each of his movies and learning a little bit more and applying something different each time. This one here, like, you see the introduction of Tom Hardy, who he goes on to work with multiple times. Marion Cotillard as well is in there from multiple times. Ken Watanabe is there from Batman Begins. You also have, obviously, Michael Caine back from The Prestige, and I think
you got Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. You also have, this is one where he really started to lean into IMAX. I know, like, The Dark Knight had multiple scenes that were shot in IMAX, and that was a big thing that he was, this huge director at this point was going to start using IMAX cameras. And then with Inception, he goes a step further and he starts filming more with IMAX cameras and coming up with not only clever ways to use IMAX cameras, but like to have that full frame, like the scale of what is happening really makes sense when you're shooting it on an IMAX camera. So again, kind of iterating time after time. Hans Zimmer, another one, like, coming back after the Batman movies to again collaborate with him. Again here, so he is developing as every movie goes on. He's coming up with new ways to take things that he learned before and apply them to his current film, and clearly think of ideas as well for things that he's working on in the future. As for the film itself, there is too much exposition, I will agree. Like, they are constantly explaining it, but it works because I don't feel like the movie ever treats you like an idiot. I don't think the movie has ever been like, you as an audience member are probably kind of stupid and can't figure this out, so we're going to tell you all about it. I think it's just that it's hard to capture how, like, what level of the dream that they're in without having someone kind of tell you, because they all kind of, they don't look the same. Obviously, they're stylistically very different. You're going from the car, you're going from the warehouse to the car to the where
To the
Joseph
hotel.
Gordon-Levitt, the hotel, and then to the snow part at the very end of it. So visually, they are
And then
all
there's another level as well when they go to like the subconscious, like the whole kind of
limbo,
dream. Limbo, yeah.
So visually, they're all different, right? And you can tell that enough, but it's just, it does need that little bit of assistance where they're kind of saying, oh, you know, here's how we can do things. But I think it works because they're kind of problem solving in the minute, like things are going wrong and they're trying to figure it out in the moment. So the dialogue feels like they are having a conversation, trying to figure out the puzzle themselves. And as the audience, we're just kind of going along with it. But it works because it's explaining to us what is happening. In like, you know, so we're not really lost. So definitely probably a little bit too much exposition, but I think it just fits enough because what is happening is actually kind of crazy, and it does need a little bit of additional explanation from time to time to make sure that you are not confused basically as you're watching it, or puzzled about what part of it that they're in. But obviously I think the strongest part of this movie is the ending, because
we're talking about one of the greatest endings in cinema history.
Like to this day, people still like have full conversations about it. Like, I've people in work and stuff like that will to me like still have these conversations about what happens at the very end, and did it fall, and is it real, and is it a dream? And with it being the 10-year anniversary, a few people who I work with are quite young and have just seen it for the first time. So they are now having this conversation with me about oh, like what happened? And you're like, oh, if only you knew, I've spent the last 10 years talking about this.
Yeah. But it's great that people can rediscover it and, just kind of watch it again and be surprised. You know, I was rewatching it recently, and my girlfriend joined me for last half an hour. The film finished, and she was like, this movie is still fucking great.
Yeah.
And it is, like, even watching just bits of it just keeps you, like, your jaw drops, you know, how this movie is constructed and how it's cut. That, you know, you obviously kind of, you know, you are told a lot of things, but you also kind of, you understand at some point, like, what's going on in there. It's visually it's stunning. You know, I still remember having on my like computer desktop, like the poster, or kind of the version of the poster when you have this characters standing on like a rooftop, and there is this whole city kind of bending, you know, like. And I was like, this is amazing. I remember first time seeing this in the cinema when, you know, Ellen Page, her kind of name, Ariadne, she's obviously from mythology, kind of leading characters, you know, through this labyrinth. And when she tries, oh, what if I start messing with the with the rules of the gravity or something, and then the Paris when they are in just starts kind of like folding in, and you're like, what is fucking happening? I think I said everything. You know, one of the best endings in the movie history or whatsoever. One of the most surprising films, one of the, like, it's a romantic film by the end as well. Like, it's a very sad grievance film about someone, you know, grieving about his past, about his wife. And I'm not sure if you kind of, we like all read about articles about this film back in the days, but you have Marion Cotillard in this film playing Mo. And the music that's being used to get people out of the dream is the song that was used in La Vie en Rose. And obviously Marion Cotillard played that character, and she got a lot of awards for that as well. So it's kind of like, you know, Christopher Nolan again doing this winking to you as a character. So hey, this is Edith Piaf, and she's kind of singing to them, like Marion Cotillard being in the movie is obviously not an accident that they use this song. So it's kind of funny. Yeah. For me, Connor, if you're asking about my rating, I already said it. 5.5 stars. I might go to 6 because you're probably gonna give it 4. So
you just want to like balance out mine. No, I think I have to be in agreement with you. Like I said earlier,
what?
Like in the pre-show, like I'm still to this day disgusted that the King's Speech won Best Picture that year, because like I know like you could talk for like days on the Academy and the choices that they make and what films win what and all the politics of it, but at the end of the day, like, does anybody talk about the King's Speech, 10 years later?
Yeah, probably some senior people, they still talk about it.
I highly doubt it, because even to them it was just like a completely dull, grade, boring movie, right? It's just so boring, so rubbish, and every part of it is just so mundane and hard to sit through, in my opinion. And then on the other side of it, you have this movie that is just like, it's completely creative. It's trying something really, really new. It's filmed wonderfully. The performances are amazing. The music is incredible. Like Hans Zimmer's score in this movie, not only is it amazing in this movie, but like it has been ripped off and stolen. It has in my opinion, like the score of this film has completely set the tone for the last 10 years of movies, like big blockbuster movies. That like the noise that we kind of like parody for Tenet, watch that like bwam, like it gets used so often now, and yet it was made. I'm not saying that Tenet or Inception was the first movie to use it, because I'm sure someone will be able to point out a time when it was used before, but this is the movie that made it iconic. And then it just keeps happening over and over and over again in all these other movies. So you have all these elements that come together to make this just an outstanding movie. And then you have the ending of it, which has still got people talking and debating. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. And, it doesn't actually matter whether the thing topples or not, because,
the discussion matters, right?
It's the discussion. That's all it's about. It's that, again, like as we said earlier, like that love of film and that love of cinema that he has, that he knows when he's in the editing room of this, or when he's writing this, or when he's shooting it, or whatever point he had that idea that when people come out of the cinema after watching this is what they're going to talk about. Like friends and families are going to come out of it and they're going to be immediately talking about, did it fall? Did it topple? And doesn't matter if it toppled. Well, the rules are set up that you can't touch someone else's totem. So why is he using this totem? Because that was Maul's totem. So does it actually even really make a difference?
Don't even start. Don't even go there, Connor.
I know.
It's another hour of discussion.
But it's like, he knew at that point in time what he was doing. And yet, with all of these things that you can consider, special effects and all of that stuff in there too, the practical effects, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the rotating room. I don't know if you've ever seen the behind the scenes, but they built the room on a massive hallway inside a machine that would rotate. So it's all done practical. So like they had to choreograph the fight scene to the point where he was like Joseph Gordon-Levitt is running up the walls and stuff like that, which also feels like a little bit of a reaction to the kind of criticisms of the Batman movies, which were that Christopher Nolan kind of falls apart when he's directing fight scenes, was kind of a big critique of those movies. like he couldn't really figure out how to shoot sort of fighting scenes, and yet in this movie it works so perfectly. It's like probably one of the greatest examples that you could find of how to shoot like a fight between two people on a massively odd and grand scale. So you have all of these things, and yet the Academy were like, nah, it's not the one. It's not the one. And Nolan didn't even get a Best Director for this one. It got nominated
So it
won cinematography, sound editing, sound mixing, and visual effects. And then it got nominated for Best Picture, Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and Best Original Score. Like, I don't know how you look at any of those categories and think this movie was surely not the best that year. How was it not?
Yeah.
Anyway, I say we're gonna go 5 stars, but I also think for this one we give it a heart.
Oh yes, a heart. I love hearts. Yeah, give it 2 if you can.
All right, there it is.
Just 1.
5 stars and a heart.
Fantastic. I mean, like you said, I can probably talk about it forever, but let's move on to the next film. That's the penultimate movie we're going to talk about. And this is the longest movie in Christopher Nolan's career. Oh, is it? I'm not sure if it's longer than The Dark Knight Rises, but it's 2 hours 49 minutes. It's the space opera, aka the Interstellar 2001 Space Odyssey of these days.
We must confront the reality that nothing in our solar system can help us.
Now you need to tell me what your plan is to save the world.
We're not meant to save the world. We're meant to leave it. And this is the mission we were trained for.
I've got kids, Professor.
Get out there and save them.
You have no idea when you're coming back.
I'm coming back.
We must reach far beyond our own lifespans. We must think not as individuals, but as a species. We must confront the reality of interstellar travel.
Murph, I love you. Forever.
Again, one of those movies that I think Christopher Nolan wanted to kind of try himself like fully, right? So he made a heist movie set in a dream, almost a Bond movie, like some bits of it, like a Bond movie. He made movies based on comic books. He made like a period movie. And now he's making a sci-fi. So it's almost like Stanley Kubrick making, Spartacus, Stanley Kubrick making Paths of Glory, and now Stanley Kubrick making sci-fi. And now next thing we want to see from Christopher Nolan is a comedy. That's gonna happen, hopefully. But the Interstellar has another, fantastic cast with the one and only Sir Michael Caine as Professor Brandt, and we have Matthew McConaughey, we have Anne Hathaway, in there, and also when I was watching it recently, I've noticed, hey, that's Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, I never noticed that, funny enough, until I watched it recently. I was like, oh, there's Timothée Chalamet himself.
Yeah, but the supporting cast is also the supporting cast, the rest of the people, there is no kind of weak spot in there, and even people who they're for maybe 15 minutes, they're still kind of amazing and great. And there is one of the biggest surprises I think for me in that movie. It was that Matt Damon appeared halfway through, because they talk about him quite a lot when they go to the NASA and they say, oh, this is the very promising place and this doctor, and you don't know who that is until they actually open and go there halfway through the film, open the place when he's sleeping, and it's Matt Damon, the guy who's gonna be a Martian as well. Or he was a Martian before, I think. It's very close between
it was
those.
after this, because I think
he
turned down The Martian actually because he did this, and Ridley Scott had to be like they're different movies, and because you were in space doesn't mean they're anything alike.
but you can't really this is even more interesting for me because he plays a completely different person, completely different character in there, but you still feel like, hey, this is Matt Damon, he's all right, like he's a cute guy, he's like always helpful. But here Matt Damon is just like, what is going on? Like you can hear the sinister tones of like Hans Zimmer's music, when he appears, and you're like, something isn't quite right. And then when he does what he does, it's just like, oh shit, this is Matt Damon going really rogue, and I really liked it. Yeah, this movie has some crazy ideas. So it has space travel, it has wormholes, bending time. It has like different galaxies, and it's got giant waves as well.
Yeah, it does.
And also talking robots, almost like those robots like look super weird, but hey, I'm there. I'm there for it. It has Cassie Affleck, and when you think about Timothée Chalamet and his voice, and Cassie Affleck and his voice later on, the only explanation between changing the voice of Timothée Chalamet being like a deep voice and Cassie Affleck doing it's probably because of the whole problems on Earth and dust everywhere. His voice have changed completely, but I mean, I'm a sucker for space movies, and especially when they are like this is a space opera, almost like a soap opera. It's a love story, period. It's a story between father and his daughter.
Yeah,
and the whole movie is essentially about that. And the bottom line of it, the love can conquer everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you kind of say it, like it sounds cheesy, but this is Christopher Nolan's version of like a romantic story. Did you cry watching that film? Were you moved at all, or?
So I agree with you saying that it sounds cheesy, because I do think in the film when Anne Hathaway first kind of pitches the idea where she wants to go to the other planet, and Matthew McConaughey kind of makes her confess that she's in love with the astronaut who went there. I'm forgetting his name. And he's kind of soured at this point because obviously they lost all of that time going down to the wave planet, which was just such an amazing sequence. But perhaps even more amazing than the sequence itself, like more amazing than the spectacle of that sequence, like the huge waves and how like Tars turns into like a hash almost as he goes across the water and picks up Anne Hathaway and comes back. Even better than that is the point at which they arrive back on the ship, and the other astronaut that they left on it has aged. Is it Romilly? Maybe, I think Romilly is. So they get back on, and he has aged like 20 years. Being there, and it's just such an emotional moment where you like of how they don't have to do anything about clocks or anything like that to tell you about time. It's just you come back and the physical change that has happened to him within what has felt like minutes for us as an audience, and probably minutes as well for Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway, has been years of this man's life. So anyway, McConaughey's kind of furious at her at that point. So he makes her confess that she has feelings for this other astronaut, and she kind of explains that love might actually have a much deeper power and meaning than we could possibly understand right now. And it does kind of, the first time you hear it, it is a little bit like, okay, right, okay. But I think as the movie progresses, it does make perfect sense what it is that he's trying to get at. It's like it is actually beyond our comprehension at this point in time, and the idea is that in the future they figure out that it's different, and the power that it actually holds, and how it's so closely tied to time and gravity, for example. So that to me is like, oh, that it did come off as a little bit corny, but somehow he manages just to make it work. And in terms of did I get emotional at it, I would say that a criticism you could level at Christopher Nolan's movies, like even the other ones that we've looked at, is that they maybe lack a little bit of emotion in favor of spectacle.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that at any point are characters like poorly written or anything like that. And there certainly is plenty of emotion to be felt with Leonardo DiCaprio and Marianne Cotillard, whenever she's looking to jump out the window because, he's trying to convince her that she's lost her mind and that she needs help and stuff like that. So there's definitely like emotional weight to it, but this movie is the one where I think he really, really leans into human connection. Like the connection between people is what drives this film all the way through. So it is the biggest spectacle of all of them. It's space, it's wormholes, it's relativity, it's time, and yet it's the scene where Matthew McConaughey sits down in front of the camera and Jessica Chastain first appears, and he just begins to just break down as he realizes that the young daughter that he left is now the same age as he is at this point in time. It just carries so much weight with it, and you just really, really get how he feels, like how, like, especially through his performance where he is just destroyed. He's falling apart entirely at this point.
Yeah.
And it just carries so much emotional weight. So I didn't cry because I don't tend to cry in movies anyway, especially even at like sad parts. They never really never really gets me there. I don't know why. It just doesn't. More of a reflection on me probably than anything else.
Boy! You have not watched the best of the best, but we'll talk about it one day.
But the emotional weight of that sequence, and some of the other parts, even when he's in the sort of like fourth dimension at a later time, like they just carry so much weight to them that you can't not be invested in it. He manages to make this huge space opera, as you said, like, this huge sci-fi film, but yet at the end of the day, it's all about Cooper and Murph. That's it. Like that's all it's about, really. It's about their connection the whole way through it.
Yeah, I think it works. It works really well. Like I enjoy that. That the scene when he watches the video and cries became a meme. It's used so many times. As well. But when you watch it like on the original, it has an impact on you. Like when you see your daughter like within couple of hours aging, and becoming like the same age you are. But she obviously isn't the same age. He is. Let's be honest. Jessica Chastain was actually a bit younger than Matthew McConaughey, and that was kind of funny. I'm the same age as you are. No, you're not. Okay. But the other things I was thinking when I was watching it. Obviously, there is this dance of the spaceship when there is a docking, and it just brings to mind the Space Odyssey, the sequences with the waltz in space, and that's a beautiful nod to the past. I'm we are like 100% aware, and Christopher Nolan admitted it many times. Actually, he was one of the people who supervised and was in charge of restoring the Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's film, and he loves that film, and you can see that there is a nod to that. 100%. So those films, have like Space Odyssey have changed the history, and I think this one, it's one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made, but like in every sci-fi movie, it's not about the like you said earlier. It's not about the technology, the the space travel. It's about like the humans inside and what happens to the humanity, and it's such a positive film.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
You said about corny or corn. Corn is being the main thing, planted on Earth, and there's nothing else. But hey, we can still survive. And I want to watch movies like that, that will make you think, but make you think about something, give you something positive to live with.
So it's funny that, because watching it now, obviously I haven't seen it in a few years. And as we sit in the middle of a pandemic and you see like the sequences where they have to like mask up and stuff like that, it almost in a weird way feels a little bit more relevant now than it even did back then. Like the kind of the blight is kicking in, and it's kind of a recreation of the Dust Bowl happening again, which, by the way, another amazing sequence is that like having the footage from people who lived through the Dust Bowl in the US like spliced in at the kind of start of it. It was another great touch, because it's kind of like, that like history has repeated itself in a way, and where people are kind of back at the same point at which they were. But a couple of interesting things about it is the crops. I don't know if have you heard anything about the crops in the movie?
That Christopher Nolan actually wanted to have the field, and he was talking to Zack Snyder on like how to grow a field of corn, because Zack Snyder was using it for the Man of Steel sequences. That's right, of Man of Steel. So do you know a little bit more about this?
Well, they grew fields and fields of crops, and they were able to sell those crops at the end of the movie when they were done filming and make a profit on them. So they were able to they give that money back to the studio. So they were, and as far as I know, for most of his films, if not all of his movies, he's came in under budget, and in many cases been able to return some of his budget back. Anyway, we have 10 seconds left. What are you going to give this on Letterboxd, Rado?
Come on, you surprised me a little bit.
It's 5 stars. It's 5 stars. Come on, we'll not give it a heart, but this movie, like the music, the use of tars and case here, like, it's one thing I thought they did so well over 2001, which obviously where you have Hal, and Hal is so devoid of humanity, and yet in reality with computers, things like Siri and stuff like that, we go the opposite way, as we try to make them feel human. We try to make them feel like us. And TARS and Case, not only do they feel like us, but they are programmable. So like, being able to turn that off, like, this is again so clever. The actual way that they're designed is super clever. I think this is a 5-star movie.
So this is 5 stars for you. I'm looking at my score here, 4.5 on Letterboxd. Maybe a little bit too long, but maybe not long enough. Maybe the sequences with the books, the bookshelf, maybe just a little bit over the top. I don't know. Okay, let's go with 5 stars.
Yeah,
Connor.
5 stars.
You bullied me into it, but I'm happy.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth it.
All right, let's jump into the last film we be talking about before Tenet arrives next week, and we're gonna watch it and review it for you and spoil everything. This is Dunkirk, 2017.
The enemy tanks have stopped.
Why?
Why waste precious tanks when they can pick us off from the air like fish in a barrel?
There are 400,000 men on this beach.
He's coming back round. He's coming back round!
War movie, history drama, historical, almost a recreation of an event from 3 points of view. So we have our Second World War has just started. The Allied soldiers wanted to fight Germans, but they were not expecting what they got from Hitler, and they had to go back, and they got stuck on the beaches of Dunkirk. In the meantime, in the good old England, Churchill decided to send all the boats available from the south coast and beyond to take this 300,000 or 400,000 soldiers from the beaches and transport them safely home. And we also have one other perspective, which is the from the Spitfire, from the RAF fighter, or three fighters at the beginning, that kind of battle in the air versus the German Junkers, or whatever they were called.
Yeah, I can't remember.
German planes. So this is a short movie, and this is the movie again I watched in the Odeon Leicester Square, not as a premiere, but on the 70 millimeters in like the film negative. Yeah, this movie, I was blown away by it. It's hour and 46 minutes. And this is the most prolific, I think, use of Shepard tones in all of Christopher Nolan movies. Have you heard about Shepard tones? Did we talk about it before? No. So Shepard tones are tones played by the instrument. So like you have organs or something, and they kind of repeat each other. So there's a sequence that repeats, and when you listen to it, you kind of it sounds like it's going higher and higher. So the tension is ramped up and ramped up. So you have and in reality, what's happening is these are only the same tones being played, but your mind is tricked into thinking that this is actually a raising tension. I'm going to link a very nice video on explaining how the Shepard tones are used and how they're used in Christopher Nolan movies. But this movie is, if I can maybe use one word or two words, is ticking clock. You have the ticking clock is pretty much everywhere in this film, and and it's a race against time, and it's actually a race against time. So you have on one hand those soldiers stuck on the beach, which feels like hell. This is a vision of hell. The place when you can't get out doesn't matter how hard you try, what tricks you're gonna play. You're not gonna go there. You try to get onto the boat. First, jumping the queue. Hate people who jump the queue. But okay, you have a sequence of guys running with someone, and they just trying to jump the queue. They on the boat finally after several attempts. What's happened to the boat? Boats get torpedoed by the German submarine, and you're going back to the beach, and then you're like, oh my god, what are we gonna do next? What's the option? It reminded me of this fantastic sequence from Atonement. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. It's this Joe Wright movie, and he has a sequence from the Dunkirk beach. It's a one shot, very long tracking shot of like what's happening over there when the soldiers are like desperate and waiting, and they've got nothing to do. And this feels like it. It's like, you know, the big stretch of beach, people waiting in a line for forever, and the smoke on the horizon, and you know you're doomed. And I remember I read a lot of interviews about this film after it was released, when the veterans from Second World War said what was recreated perfectly in this film is the sound of the German fighter planes going down and getting ready to start shooting, dropping bombs. The sound of that in the cinema, and I was watching it yesterday with my headphones on, is just incredible. Your hair starts standing on your arm the moment you hear this sound, and it's this is like those 3 parts. Every part is kind of different, but I love the part on the beach and the story of those young soldiers, like so desperate to leave but cannot leave. It just makes me feel anxious. 2 other parts, you have Mark Rylance with Barry Keoghan and Tom Glyn Carney going on like a small recreational boat, and they go into Dunkirk. On the way, they pick up the soldier played by Cillian Murphy. Then this is also like very dark story over there. It goes to the place when I was not expecting, when Barry Keoghan gets hurt in the head. You're like, what just happened here? Like this out of nowhere, this big drama is happening here. And also you have Tom Hardy again in the face mask. So after he played Bane in the Dark Knight Rises, Tom Hardy decided to put a mask. Christopher Nolan gave him a mask. You too ugly for this film, and wear something on his face. And he's a RAF pilot, and those sequences, like you were describing before, how they shot it, and there are documentaries on it behind the scenes, are just spectacular. I think you feel like you're in a cockpit with them. You feel how small it is, how realistic it is. You've got all those gigs and switches and everything, and how trapped you are as well when at some point the plane lands in the sea, and Collins cannot get out from the cockpit. You're almost with him over there, and for me it's one of the greatest war movies ever made. There is literally minimal dialogue. I think they stripped the dialogue from that movie for the purpose of the story is just being told by the pictures, by the music, by like ramping up the tension with, like I said, Shepard tones, with the ticking clock. I was mesmerized when I watched it. I think every movie Christopher Nolan does, it kind of works on me on a different level, but also just makes me really anxious, but also really excited. And this is again an uplifting movie. Towards the end, you got this uplifting message about humanity. That this was a disaster. What happened there in terms of the Second World War, and how unprepared the soldiers were. But it's humanity that kind of relives in us, when people go and help those young soldiers stuck there. It's a really beautiful ending. Connor, tell me something I've not said.
I think that this goes the opposite way from Interstellar, and obviously both that it's a far shorter film, but also it does kind of lean away from the smaller, more interpersonal stories, like in favor of it pretty much being entirely about spectacle. Now that sounds almost like it's almost disrespectful. Like if you say, if you're going to make a war movie that's a spectacle about Dunkirk, even though it was like such a horrific point in time, it's not actually disrespectful. Like it's a spectacle in the sense of like he's taken such an incredible level of detail, like you mentioned with the sound of the German planes. I have to imagine that like kind of cold and lonely feeling of them being on the beach, that sort of like sense of impending doom that you get from it, to the scenes where they obviously the just incredible scenes of the dog fights in the sky. I don't know if you've seen any of the behind the scenes, but for some of them they put Tom Hardy and Jack Lowden in like sort of special versions of Spitfires, like kind of recreated Spitfires, where it allowed a pilot to sit in the front and then the actors to sit in the back in what looked like a sort of fake pilot seat, so that they could then strap IMAX cameras onto the wings and get shots of these people in the sky, in the actual kind of the cockpits of the planes, through to the one that I mentioned earlier, where they rebuilt like these smaller versions of them and put them on the edge of a cliff in like Santa Monica or something like that overlooked the sea, so that they could get, again, practical effects of the actors being kind of thrown around inside these planes as opposed to being on a green on a soundstage. They still want that, the way the light kind of reflects off the glass casing, and how the sea actually looks, through to then, of course, the boats and the constant feeling of being soaking wet. There's just such an attention to detail with it that you can't help but think, like, you know, it's paying a real homage to it. Like, nothing about it is pleasant. At any point in time is anything about this movie pleasant, really, other than when Harry Styles gets handed 2 beers through the window and at the end of it, and they read Churchill's sort of now very famous speech. It's the movie has just such an attention to detail and is such a spectacle in all of the right ways that, like you said, there isn't really much dialogue. The first sort of maybe 5 to 10 minutes of this movie, there's basically no talking whatsoever. Our main character doesn't say anything for the longest time. One of the other main characters, deliberately, as we then kind of learn, says nothing. Even the scenes of Mark Rylance on the boat with Cillian Murphy, there's not an awful lot of dialogue there, and we get a little bit.
This is the most talkative one, right?
Pretty much,
yeah.
And we get a little bit of Tom Hardy and Jack Lowden, which is some amazing dialogue. Like I remember even in the trailer.
This is what you can hear. Like, if you're not listening, like, oh, this is also a jargon. Like, what they talking about? Like, oh, check this gauge, check the fuel, or whatever. They not like, there is not real kind of, you know, dialogue. Oh, I will miss you. Yes, my friend, go and win the war. There's nothing like that. You know, this is very raw discussion.
Yeah. Even the part where he's like, oh, he's on me, and then Tom Hardy just kind of like pulls him behind, and he's like, I'm on him. You know, it's so being again. So it is, but it's so like, oh, Tom Hardy's gonna fuck these guys up. You just know it. We haven't mentioned Thingy either in it, who has a small part to play, but I think a really good part to play. Kenneth Branagh. As kind of the leader of the Navy. Like, he has just enough humor there in how he talks to like the kind of captain of the army, you know, like the kind of line like, oh, that's why you're not Navy, or that's why I'm Navy and you're not, or something like that there, when they're kind of talking about the times of the tide coming back in. But it's definitely not my favorite of his movies, but I absolutely love it, again, for all of the reasons that I love his other stuff, is like the spectacle, the attention to detail, the practical sets. They all have a part to play in making this movie amazing, and him again pushing forward the medium of cinema, like what is possible. This is pretty much, if not all filmed in IMAX, then most of it is filmed in IMAX. So again, that iteration that we see of him as he pushes forward and forward and forward, learning more and more and more, and how to attack things. Funny story, actually, very quickly, because we're about to run up on the clock on this one. When they were filming, I think it was the scene where Loden lands the plane in the sea and gets stuck. They had an IMAX camera on the strapped to the edge of the plane, and it sank faster than they had expected. And it took them a long time to kind of recover it back out, and they had thought that the footage that they had lost they had captured was going to be lost. But what they did was that there's like an old Hollywood trick where they kept the footage in water and had it shipped to Los Angeles. So they kept the film wet, shipped it to Los Angeles, where it was then able to be recovered and used in the film, as opposed to the opposite way around, where if they had have opened it or tried to save it at the time, they would have lost that footage. So they used a very kind of some old-fashioned technique about keeping the film itself wet, and whenever you get it, I guess, to somewhere where you can kind of extrapolate it, and they were able to use it. Anyway,
amazing story.
Yeah, it's pretty. There's another one that I'm forgetting. I'm afraid that was pretty cool in this one. I remember watching some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I thought it was really impressive.
One thing I will add to kind of the stories, and maybe you heard about it, maybe not, but I kind of like it so much because, Michael Caine's been in every film that Christopher Nolan made since The Prestige, and he's also in Dunkirk.
He is.
He's not listed. He's not listed there, but he's the Fortis leader. So when the plane, like the pilots have the discussion with the base, that's Michael Caine's voice, and it's very brief, but you're like, when I was listening, I was watching it, I was listening to it, I was like, yes, that's him, that is Mr. Michael Caine. Okay, Connor, so I kind of feel like you were gonna give it 4 stars.
I don't know, because like as a spectacle, I really, really appreciate it. Like, just I got it in 4K Dolby Vision on my TV, and I also put both of my HomePods in to play it, and like it's just amazing to kind of sit and I like that it's short. I do feel like if it was any longer, that would kind of run its course a little bit, sometimes, because there isn't a lot of plot really happening here. I don't know whether to go 4 or 4.5. What are you think?
I'm going 4.5. For me, it's almost a perfect movie. And I don't want to kind of jump into 5, but
no, it's not
close.
Quite there,
It's close to the top, and 4.5 for me. I'm not sure what you're gonna decide, but you bullied me into 5 stars into Interstellar. I might convince you to give it 4.5 stars.
Let's go 4.5. That's fine. I agree. 4.5
for Dunkirk. Yes, and that's done. That's it. Thank you for today, and we'll speak soon. Now, before we close, we ask on Twitter what our colleagues, people who follow us, people who listen to us think. And I got a couple of things from Twitter. I got a couple of things from the Letterboxd. So David, and I spoke to David a little bit about his choices. He would be probably talking about the Dark Knight close to the top, but without that, The Prestige being kind of the best film for him. And we spoke about Interstellar, that he does not really like the sequences with the books and the whole kind of fifth dimension or whatever that is. The other one was from Maciej, and Maciej said his favorite film, except for the Dark Knight, is Inception. So I'm Team Maciej on this one. And actually, a few other things from Letterboxd. For example, David Sims on Letterboxd has his top 10 with Interstellar as number 1. And there, Ben McDonald has Dunkirk as number 1. Imagine that. And we have Mareb, The Prestige is number 1. And then Brian's number 1 is Dark Knight. Number 2 is Inception. I also had a look through like some other lists and other people, and take your pick. It could be Memento, it could be Dunkirk, it could be The Prestige, it could be Interstellar. And I would say for me, definitely Inception is like the number 1 film, even kind of beyond the Dark Knight. But I understand why people would kind of have their own preferences, because except for the comedy, kind of you find pretty much everything in like Christopher Nolan's movies. I think the funniest movie he made was actually Memento. There's so many funny scenes in there that there isn't that many funny scenes in any other of his films. Your kind of choice of like the best Christopher Nolan movie?
Yeah, it's got to be Inception. I agree. It has to be Inception. I can't see how, like the others are all masterpieces in their own way. he's definitely one of the best, if not the best director alive, in my opinion, because again, he just kind of hits that sweet spot between like, you know, commercialism and art, and where they can kind of meet to, in my opinion, it's like, what's the point in having all of these like amazing things if nobody's going to watch them or nobody's going to see them, you know? And I feel like he's aware of that too. So Interstellar is that kind of like, or sorry, Inception is that point where he's like, yeah, like I want to do something cool and crazy and kind of James Bondish or like spy-ish or thriller, but it's going to be like batshit crazy at the same time. It's not just going to be, you know, a heist. It's going to be, this is not Ocean's 11. This is not The Italian Job. This is, you know, like we're going to be talking about dreams and going within people's dreams and dreams within dreams. It's, even as a concept, just sounds ridiculous. So I gotta say, yeah, Interstellar. Inception. Keep saying Interstellar. Inception. Numero uno.
26th of August, Connor. That's gonna be the day. The new movie from Christopher Nolan, Tenet, will be out in the cinemas, at least in Europe and some other places, not in the US just yet.
Yeah.
I am really looking forward to it. This is a movie that I've not seen the trailer yet. I am just annoyingly kind of skipping through Instagram if I open it, because every other story there is an advert from Tenet, and there's like footage. I'm like, I don't want to see this. Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki. Yeah,
a little bit of a
5 stars for Tenet.
Yeah, well, it's interesting though. This is a little bit of a move away from a lot of his usual cast. Yeah, I mean, but I do find that he is very good at doing this though, with like, you know, I mean, Kenneth Branagh's there, Michael Keane's there, those to be expected. Yeah. But I do find, if you look at Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar, Anne Hathaway, what about Joseph Gordon-Levitt in both Inception and Batman or Dark Knight Rises. Like, he's very good at kind of catching people who are on trend or contemporary. You know, John David Washington and Robert Pattinson both kind of getting to like high points in their career right now. And I feel like, you know, 10 years ago, he would never have worked with Robert Pattinson coming off the back of just the Twilight Saga. But yet, he's obviously had taken the time to improve and prove himself a really, really good actor. So, like, it's great that Nolan manages to stay kind of contemporary that way and bring in people as they kind of are on the upturn in their careers, I think, to give them that massive boost. Also, Ludwig Göransson making the music this time, kind of exciting. I think Hans Zimmer was busy for this one. I think he wasn't able to score this one because of time. Not time, sorry. Like, you know, commitments elsewhere.
I think he's working on Dune.
That might be it. Yeah, he might be doing Dune. So yeah, I think Ludwig Göransson coming in here, because I think everything he's touched recently has been amazing. So we haven't really got any sense of his score yet from the trailers. So I'll be really interested to see how this turns out in a week's time. I got my Coke ordered. I've got my popcorn. I've got my nachos. I'm ready, Rado. I'm ready.
Do you think the Coke is already standing there and you just gonna?
I hope so.
It's gonna be flat. It's gonna be flat and it's gonna be warm.
I'm wondering, do I have to cut a hole in my mask to get it? Like, you know,
or just maybe pull over yourself and that'll be the same. No,
let's do it. I don't mind.
Right. I think this is it. I'm just gonna quickly look on if I've got any other notes. I think. I want to just go to the 2-hour mark and then cut it down.
Are you going to edit this one so that this part is at the very end or very beginning? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I will do some sort of time jump in there, and then we're going to be explaining in the next episode how this episode works, actually. So, this might be the ultimate Christopher Nolan episode. Or the best one you will find on the internet. If you find better ones, please let us know. But also rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts. Help us to promote the show. We do it from passion for movies and because we love Christopher Nolan and everyone else. Find us on Twitter at BlockbustersPod, at @rdefolta, and at DesignConnor. On Letterboxd, we are the Blockbusters, and you can find all the ratings we gave to the films today and in the past over there. Our theme music is by Scott Holmes, and you can find more of his work at scottholmesmusic.com. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, rate, recommend. Please rate our rants. Recommend our rants to your friends, to your enemies. They all deserve it. Find us on Apple Podcast, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Castbox, and Pocket Casts. So hopefully our next episode is going to be 7-hour spoiler special of the Tenet with the exclusive interview that we're going to make with Christopher Nolan. Christopher, if you're listening, please give me your phone number. I'll call you. Connor, thank you very much for this episode. Stay safe, and we'll speak soon.
Yes, and we'll have finally watched Tenet. The next time we speak, we will finally watch Tenet. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll do one in between on all of the news that happens at the weekend with DC. I don't know, bye.
And like that, he's gone.
Look who's here.